Hello, everyone. My name is Courtney. I'm a longtime therapist and currently the clinical director of an integrated mental health care agency. I'm also a community advocate, one that specifically focuses around mental health support and mental health awareness. I'd like to welcome you today to our first episode of You're Not Broken, You're Growing, a space where we slow down, breathe, and make sense of what it means to be human. If you're here, there's a good chance you've had moments where you've wondered, why am I like this? Why can't I just handle things the way other people do? Why does everything feel so big or so heavy or so confusing? Maybe you've said these things out loud. Maybe you've only whispered them to yourself. Maybe you've never said them at all, but you felt them in your chest or your stomach or the back of your throat. Wherever you are in your life story, I want you to know this. You are not alone. You are not failing, and you are not broken. You are a person who has lived things. You're a person who has adapted. You're a person who is growing, even if it doesn't look or feel like growth yet. So take a breath. You made it here. Let's begin. Before we dive in, let's take a moment just to arrive. You don't have to sit in a certain way. You don't have to breathe in a certain way. Just take a moment now and notice your body exactly as it is. Let your eyes land on something in the room. Notice its color, its shape, the shadow it creates, the texture. Now notice one sound around you. Maybe something close, maybe something you're picking up that's slightly farther away. And finally, notice one point of contact. Your feet on the floor, your back against a chair, your hands resting on your lap. It's okay if you don't feel calm in this moment, and you don't even have to feel completely grounded. You just have to notice, and that's enough. A lot of people, kids, teens, adults, elders, walk into therapy and say some version of the same sentence. I think there's something wrong with me. And every time I feel this little ache in my chest, not because they're right, but because they've been carrying that belief alone for so long. People feel broken for so many reasons. They were never taught what emotions mean. They grew up in environments where big feelings weren't safe. They learned to hide their needs to keep the peace. They compare themselves to people who are also struggling quietly. They've survived things they never got support for. They've been told directly or indirectly that their reactions are too much. And here's the thing, when you don't understand your internal world, it's easy to assume the worst about yourself. If you shut down, you think you're cold. If you get overwhelmed, you think you're weak. If you get angry, you think you're a bad person. If you need rest, you think you're lazy. If you feel deeply, you think you're dramatic. But none of these interpretations are accurate. They're just the stories we tell ourselves when no one ever taught us the truth. Feeling broken is not a diagnosis. It's a sign of overwhelm, isolation, or misunderstanding, not failure. And I want to share something with you, not to make this about me, but to help you feel less alone in your own story. I understand these feelings so deeply because I've lived them too. I'm not speaking about shame, overwhelm, or survival responses from a distance or from what I've learned in a textbook. I'm speaking as someone who has had to untangle them in my own body, my own nervous system, my own life. There were times when I thought I was the problem. There were times I didn't understand why I reacted the way I did. Times when I carried emotions that felt too big, too fast, or too confusing. And for a long time, I didn't really truly have the language for any of it. Being a trauma survivor shaped the way I learned to move through the world, how I protected myself, how I connected with others, how I interpreted my own emotions. It also shaped the way I show up as a therapist and a guide, because I know what it feels like to believe you're broken, and I know what it feels like to think your reactions make you too much. I know what it feels like to carry things quietly because you're afraid people won't understand. And I also know from lived experience, not just clinical training, that these reactions are not signs of brokenness. They are signs of survival, of adaptation, of a nervous system that learned to protect you the best way it could. So when I'm telling you that you're not broken, it's not saying it as a slogan. I'm saying it as someone who has had to learn that truth in my very own bones. So again, you're not broken, you're growing. And I know that because I've grown too. When people imagine growth, they picture something peaceful, like a plant slowly opening towards the sun. But real growth is chaotic. It's uncomfortable and it's full of moments where you think you're going backwards. Growth can look like crying more than usual, feeling irritated or sensitive, needing more rest, saying no and then feeling guilty about it, realizing you're tired of pretending or of wearing a mask, feeling emotions you used to numb, outgrowing relationships or patterns, wanting more for yourself, but not knowing exactly how to get there. Growth often feels like falling apart because you're shedding old survival strategies that no longer fit. Think about a seed. It literally breaks open before anything new can grow. Think about a snake shedding its skin. It rubs against rough surfaces. It feels exposed. It feels vulnerable. Think about a butterfly. It dissolves into literal mush inside the chrysalis before it transforms. Growth is not pretty. It's not linear. It's not comfortable. But it is movement. It is change. It is life. So let's move on now to reframing that broken ideology and the story surrounded by it and figuring out what your brain was actually trying to do. Let's take a common example. Someone says, I shut down when people get upset. I must be broken. But shutting down is actually a survival response. It's your brain saying, this feels overwhelming, let me protect you. Another example, I get angry too fast. Anger is often a signal, a boundary, a fear, a sense of injustice, a need that's being ignored. Or, I can't relax, I'm always on edge. That's hypervigilance, a nervous system that learned to stay alert because it once needed to. Your reactions are not random. They're not character flaws. They're not evidence of brokenness. They're adaptations, brilliant, creative, productive adaptations your brain and body developed to help you survive something. When you understand the purpose behind your reactions, you stop seeing yourself as a problem and start seeing yourself as a person. Let's move now into practical tools to work on some of these very important things about helping your brain and your body feel more regulated. The first tool is name and normalize. And this is a simple check-in where you first name what you're feeling and second, normalize why it makes sense. So here are a couple of examples. I'm overwhelmed, and it makes sense because today was a lot. I'm anxious, and it makes sense because I'm waiting for news. I'm sad, and it makes sense because something mattered to me that I'm not really happy about at the moment. This tool teaches your brains my feelings are valid and I'm not wrong for having them. This tool is also a step towards acceptance. Now, acceptance of emotions and acceptance of thoughts that feel uncomfortable doesn't mean that we have to like them. It's just learning that they are simply there. And this name and normalize is a big part of that because we spend a lot of our time fighting against what we're feeling. And when we can normalize, hey, I feel overwhelmed because there's a lot going on today, keeps us from fighting that and trying to change the way we feel. That acceptance of it's okay that I feel this way, this is completely normal that I should feel this way, is a huge step towards regulation. Tool number 2 is the 10% rule. You don't have to fix everything. You don't have to transform your life overnight. Just ask yourself, what would make this 10% easier? Not perfect, not fixed, just easier. So maybe it's doing some of those little things to take care of yourself, like drinking water, stepping outside for a few seconds. Maybe it's texting someone who's a good support for you. Maybe it's turning off one light. Maybe it's unclenching your jaw. Small shifts matter. Small shifts accumulate. Small shifts are growth. Tool 3 is the not broken reminder, a phrase you can say to yourself, which is often known as a mantra or positive self-talk. So 1, this is a response, not a flaw. Or, my brain is trying to protect me. Or, I'm allowed to grow at my own pace. These reminders interrupt shame and create space for self-compassion. As we close today, I want you to remember something. You are not broken. You are responding to your life with the tools you've had, and you're allowed to grow new ones. Growth doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to be visible to anyone else. Sometimes growth is quiet. Sometimes it's slow. Sometimes it's choosing to understand yourself instead of judging yourself. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And thank you for growing in your own way at your own pace. I'll see you in the next episode.